You're listening to the Tumbling Saber Podcast, a member of the Star Wars Commonwealth Podcast Network. Check us out on the web at starwarscommonwealth.com, on iTunes, Facebook, and Twitter, and take your first step into a larger world. Hey everybody, welcome back. It's episode 107 of the Tumbling Saber Podcast. Merry Christmas to everybody. Happy belated Christmas. I hope Santa treated you all very, very well. My name is Kyle.
And I'm Steve.
And we're back to kick around The Last Jedi just a little bit more. So dense is this movie that it warrants another general review show. So Steve, how was your Christmas, man? We're talking in the past, so we're projecting into the future. Predict how your Christmas is going to go.
Christmas was great. No, every year now, since my husband and I moved in together, we split Christmas. His family does Christmas Eve. Mine does Christmas Day. So his family is maybe a 20-minute drive. His aunt does it. So we do, all the seafood. We do all the Christmas Eve classics. And then Christmas morning, we drive down to Long Island for my family.
Do you guys do traditional Italian Christmas stuff?
Yes and no. I think, we kind of we pick and choose.
Like seafood is a pretty big thing, right? In Italian at Christmas time?
Yeah, the Italians do the 7 fishes. You're supposed to have 7 seafood dishes. So it's a mix. Like his uncle makes a really good New England clam chowder.
Oh boy.
Yeah, so it's delicious. His other aunt brings a sushi platter, so we get a little quirky with it. What else do they do? Shrimp cocktail, something baked, like a salmon. My grandma she makes a really good kind of like she calls it a scungili salad. I don't know if that's the official name or that's just an old grandma, like a scungili. I don't know if that's a real thing or not.
A scungi, I don't know, but it sounds good. It sounds Italian.
Yeah, it's like squid and stuff. I think scungio, maybe it's squid in Italian. I don't know. Or it's just Americanized Italian. I have no idea. But what about you?
Well, my wife and I have hosted Christmas every year since 2006, I believe, except for one year when our daughter was 3 weeks old. And so it was like, nope, not doing it this year, people. You want Christmas, you host. And so my mom hosted that year. But yeah, 10 of the past 11 Christmases have been chez nous. Same deal this year, but we're not doing turkey. We're doing some a really nice pasta dinner. Might even have some homemade pasta involved. We'll see how that plays out.
Delish.
Yeah.
I'm in love with it. I have a homemade pasta machine thing. I love using that.
Yeah. It's a lot of work, but boy, oh boy, is it worth it. All right, so let's talk about The Last Jedi, man.
Oh, so much to talk about.
I've been trying to get most people on the Commonwealth on. I haven't gotten everybody yet, but hopefully I will. It's still very young in this movie's life, so we have time in front of us. But
2
you're
years.
Here tonight, and that's going to be good enough, man. So let's go back to the night of December 14th. And we all know how we're all extraordinarily excited as the minutes tick down, and I'm sure you're like everybody else. The day of was a complete write-off. Am I right with that?
Oh, I wasn't thinking about anything else. Nope. No work
not
was
the
done.
People that need you in your job. Sorry, people. Today you don't get Steve.
It was weird. I had butterflies in my stomach kind of throughout the day. This is probably the most, excitement I felt for a Star Wars movie. I felt it for Force Awakens, but I think just kind of the anticipation and all the speculation. I joined this podcast in the interim. I think there was just so much buildup. I was just, really feeling that excitement.
Yeah, I know. I don't know if in this era, if anything will top The Force Awakens, just because of the delay and the newness, and still was so unbelievable that Star Wars was back. But this one had a different vibe, at least for me, in that I had no idea what was coming. The more I think about how I handled my approach to this movie, earlier this year in 2017, I kind of tapped out on spoiler reports, and I just stopped bringing them to the show, and I stopped reading about them. I think that was maybe in this late spring, maybe early summer. I just said, it's enough. I keep forgetting to give spoiler warnings in the podcast, and that probably drives people nuts. So I'm out. I'm just going to try and phase out spoiler reports, and it worked. And it made my experience a whole hell of a lot better because I knew nothing going into this movie. Really, other than what was in trailers. I had no clue about Snoke. No clue about... Actually, I'd heard that Leia was going to be injured, but I didn't know how she'd save herself. Luke's mindset, his characterization, didn't really get much of that. Certainly didn't know how his fate was going to end up. So this turned out to be a really, really satisfying experience. The more I look back on it, the more I go, yeah, for the saga films, I think that's kind of how I want to treat things.
Mm-hmm.
And then standalones, I might take a different approach. For Han Solo, I might spoil myself a little more.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to have the same experience. So this was the least spoiled I was for a Star Wars movie. Well, I mean, since I got into Star Wars relatively later, Force Awakens was technically my first Star Wars movie in a theater. So everything else, I kind of already knew the lore. Everything was pretty much pop culture knowledge. Yeah, and then Force Awakens, I feel like I heard I heard a lot that I didn't really want to hear. I didn't know the big spoilers, but yeah, I pretty much like you, I kind of just steered clear of everything besides the main trailers.
Yeah, even TV spots. At a certain point, I think say as of I don't know, December 10th or 8th or so, in that last week, I just completely tuned out. It was great.
Yeah, although I did like the "Don't Spoil This" trailer that they had. I like those.
I didn't even know that those were official. I thought those were fan made.
Nope. I forget what show I was watching. Maybe it was something on FX or some network was the first time, and I was watching the episode live, whatever it was. It might have been, I don't even remember. But yeah, I was just shocked. I was like, "Whoa, what is this?" And I'd never really heard the term spoiler in a official trailer before.
Yeah, it's like Lucasfilm's finally in on the joke. The spoilers, guys, ease up.
Yeah.
No, I thought it was great. I mean, I really did think it was a fan-made thing, though. But it was only after the fact, after seeing the movie, and I was home late Saturday night after seeing the movie again. I was just catching up on some PVR stuff, and I think I finally saw the commercial then and said, oh, this is actually legit. Lucasfilm went to this trouble. That's pretty cool. Let's talk about that, because I don't know that we really talked about that in our last podcast. What did you think of the marketing of this movie? That they didn't give us TV clips along the way. We just got TV spots and trailers. You remember last year they gave us for The Force Awakens, we got TV clips galore. Not this time. Did that help or hinder the process?
Oh, it certainly helped. I mean, I'm a fan of having a little mystery before going into a movie. I don't want to know what's going to happen after every turn, and I don't like seeing a whole movie in a trailer. I like that, we got the main trailer, towards, as we got closer to the release date. Yeah, we got some TV spots, but yeah, no, I don't think there were any Jimmy Kimmel Live exclusives. I don't think. Because I think when he had the cast on, they didn't even bring a clip with them.
No, and I was telling anybody who would listen, watch tonight, you'll get a clip. Just check it out. And they brought nothing.
Yeah, I like that, and I think there was just so much mystery built into it. This is completely new territory, for the franchise, and I think they wanted to have that. I think if they build up the mystery from a marketing standpoint, it would draw more people in, right? Like, oh, why shouldn't we spoil this? Oh, why are they not releasing this? It's just, it was really a good tease.
It really was. I mean, they made a point of keeping certain things close to the vest, and as it turns out, it was probably a strategic decision to keep everything as tight as possible. I mean, they don't need to market this movie.
No,
they did.
Star Wars
TV spots
itself.
were everywhere, right? I think there was I think it's YTV, which is youth television here in Canada, where we get a lot of kiddie cartoons. But for like the 8 and up set, every commercial break had one TV spot to it. It was an absolute bombardment. So they did market it pretty hard, but I guess they didn't really need to. I mean, everybody knows Star Wars coming, right?
Yeah. I think it depends on the market they're trying to, if they were trying to reach a younger generation, maybe they market more towards youth channels. I don't know.
It's hard to say. It's hard to say. I mean, I think they might start going down that road.
Mm-hmm.
But time will tell. So you're in the theater, the lights come or go down. You watch the movie, and what's your initial reaction as the lights come back on?
So it's interesting. I wasn't disappointed. I think that's the big difference. I think a lot of people felt disappointed. I was conflicted, but more so, I think, because I didn't know how to feel. I think, I turned to Dan and I was like, I know I liked it. I don't know if I loved it yet. I definitely was entertained. I think I needed some time to process. That was my initial reaction.
Yeah, there was so much that happened in this movie that we were not expecting. So I think that is certainly a very expected reaction, I think. Like, I know I was watching the movie and having a great time while there because everything was so new to me. But my goodness, like, when it was done, I was like, whoa, like, what just happened? I need to see this movie, like, immediately again. I can't possibly begin to even talk about this movie right now. So much happened.
I think it was speechless. I think, people say speechless, but it's usually just like conjecture. It's, I was literally speechless. I didn't know what to say or think.
Kind of. I know. I left the theater with the guys, and I was just like, that was amazing. I love that so much, but I could not articulate why. And in many ways, I still can't. Although, the picture is coming clearer for me now. But yeah, at the time I was just like, I don't know why I love that, but I did.
I think I finally gotten to the point where I do love it. I do love it. And I think it struck me because you know what it is? It's so against the mold of a typical blockbuster. And what we've come to know Star Wars films to be. But it really, on the broad strokes, it really touches on what I look for in a narrative. I think yesterday we were talking, it was after we were filming the Sithmas special. I compared it to Buffy. And it really, for me, The Last Jedi is Buffy meets Battlestar Galactica, which is 2 of my top favorite shows ever made. And there's just so much there. There's so much richness. Not to say I didn't think it copied any of those properties, but there's a lot that those 2 properties did that speak to just the human condition and the character-driven nature of it. And we'll get into it as we break it down. But it really does touch on, it hits a lot of points for me.
Yes, well, I guess let's start positively. What worked for you?
I think a lot of the dynamics are what really worked for me. I liked Rey and Luke, their dynamic, their whole interaction throughout the film. Rey and Kylo, their dynamics. Poe and Leia, Poe and Holdo. I love that. I fell in love with Rose. I love
Yes.
Rose. I'm not crazy about Canto Bight per se, but Rose as a character is charming, and just brings a light to the screen.
Yeah, there's some effervescence there with that character that yeah, you can't help but smile when she's on screen.
Yeah, yeah.
She's so much fun. Kelly Marie Tran is going to be a Star Wars treasure, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
I foresee a lot of, I don't know how, but I think this character is going to get a lot of spin-off material.
Oh, I hope so.
Yeah, no, she's a lot of fun. And yeah, I like what you said about the character dynamics. And I guess we should say that what worked for you and me really didn't work for a lot of other people, which it's been really fascinating and sometimes frustrating, if I'm being frank, to watch like fandom kind of go at each other's throats over this movie, which is really, again, it's been fascinating, but it's also been a bit tiresome. But yeah, like for me, all of the dynamics and relationships and dialogues and relationships between the people made sense and felt natural to me. But for others, it really doesn't. Where do you fall on this? Does it feel natural to you? Like say the way we pick up with Luke?
Yeah, I mean, all along we expected Luke to be, I mean, we knew he was going to be beaten and kind of, cut off from the rest of the world. And, so, I mean, I wasn't shocked by the Luke that we got. I mean, I know some people, they have their opinions on certain choices, like him tossing the lightsaber over his shoulder, or, like little things here and there. But I was very much happy with the Luke we got. I mean, a lot of, a big point that I tend to agree with is that there's 30 years of Luke that we haven't seen.
Absolutely.
There's so much growth, and they kind of, but in this movie they showed us the change. I mean, he was really ready to take out his nephew because he feared him. And then kind of the guilt that he had with kind of fundamentally creating Kylo himself, is awful. And I can't imagine the guilt of something like that. Like, your one choice that you have to live with led to the deaths of thousands.
Yeah, and even though it was though I guess depending on whose side you take in the conversation, do you believe Kylo that Luke was trying to kill him in cold blood, or do you believe Luke that he had this moment of, man, like this kid's getting dark and I won't be able to stop him. I better do this while he's not suspecting it. But then he goes, "Oh, gee, no, what am I thinking?" But too late, right? It's you made it really, you slipped up, and man, that decision was awfully costly.
Yeah, I mean, they say, like, well, there's two sides to every story, or three sides, right? Yours, mine, and the truth. I can't imagine Luke would be a cold-blooded killer. I tend to not go on the side of Kylo. I think Luke, he admitted to his fault, so I kind of err on that side.
Yeah, and I think we forget that Luke doesn't kill, right? I mean, he killed a bunch of Jabba's thugs, and he shot up some stormtroopers in A New Hope, but once he really steps down the Jedi path, he doesn't killing is not really his thing.
No, I mean, so I mean, we're kind of jumping ahead, but he's like, "What do you expect? I'm not going to show up with a laser sword and take down an entire army." That's never the Luke that we got. He's not a chop him up, beat him down kind of person. His mentors are Yoda and Obi-Wan. Like, they're not, soldiers per se. It's more of a philosophical learning.
Absolutely. And when you go back to Return of the Jedi, there's that moment where he's about to kill his dad. He's about to strike down Vader before he steps back from that ledge. So it's not the first time where Luke was right at that point where he's going to kill one of his family members, only to pull himself back from the edge. Right. So, yeah, I mean, I know people are kind of shocked that Luke even considered, even for the briefest moment, and it is a bit jarring that he went down that path. But like you said, like there's 30 plus years. Like when we left Luke, he was like 23 years old in Episode 6, Return of the Jedi, and we pick up with him again, and he's what, 55 or so.
Right. I mean, he was still a naive. Well, not naive, but he was a child. I mean, he was still new to it all.
Yeah, there's more that there's a bigger gap in Luke's life that we don't know about than the span that we do cover. So much could have happened to him. And here's one of the things that I think Lucasfilm may have messed up on. If we want to call it a mess up. Like, did you read Legends of Luke Skywalker?
Not yet. I know kind of just the general gist of the way it's structured, but I haven't read it yet.
So the book, even to me, was jarring. I'll say that. Even though I think it's kind of given the soft canon label, the Luke in that book is not the Luke I was expecting. I thought we'd get a little bit more of the heroic Luke, but it's not. It's not that at all.
Mm-hmm.
But that book did absolutely prepare me for the Luke that we were going to get in The Last Jedi. At least from the standpoint of, well, he didn't spend that time gallivanting around the galaxy, taking out bad guys everywhere, because there were none left. There was nothing. There's nobody left to fight. So his 30-year gap was mostly spent studying the Force, learning the ways of the Force, or learning the ways of the Jedi, setting up his academy, recruiting students. All very peaceful stuff that, for the longest time, since the 80s, that's not kind of the way I thought about Luke Skywalker post Jedi. And we saw, Timothy Zahn's novels helped us with that, right? There was always another army to fight.
Mm-hmm.
So somewhere along the way, I thought, well, there's going to be some kind of grand adventure for Luke with lightsaber involved, but that's not in the cards whatsoever. I don't think. It might come, but yeah, this Luke that we saw from Ken Liu in Legends of Luke Skywalker is largely the one we got in The Last Jedi, just with a lot more cynicism.
I mean, with, the new canon, right? Like you said, Timothy Zahn's trilogy and whatnot. The new canon, I mean, we're supposed to believe that there was pretty much 30 years of peace until the First Order showed us up, right? Like, there, like you said, there's no reason to fight. There's no, grand lightsaber-wielding adventure. But correct me if I'm wrong, The Legends of Luke Skywalker, isn't it framed by the children of Canto Bight? I think that's what I read. It was kind of
it's like 4 stowaways on a ship headed to Canto Bight.
Yeah, which ties in very nicely to the story that the kids are telling at the end of The Last Jedi, with Luke kind of facing down the First Order and inspiring this new rebellion.
Yeah, it's a great tie. For a second, while I was watching The Last Jedi, I thought, are these kids kind of the same kids from that book? I don't think they are. I doubt they are. But I mean, the tie is there. The tie-in is absolutely there. But to go back to my point on this, it's not fair. I don't think it's on Lucasfilm's part to. I don't know. I feel like if everybody read this book, if everybody was given mandatory homework, there'd be a lot less complaining about Luke, I think, or a lot less shock about it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not right to expect people to pick up a book just so that they understand a legacy character's mindset a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the disappointment, but I think it really, you look at the central, or one of the central messages of the movie, it's about heroes and legends, and our heroes aren't always what we expect them to be, and heroes are flawed. Luke is also just a mere mortal. I mean, yes, he has force powers, but he lives and he dies. He has to make choices along the way. And sometimes they're not great. Just like everybody else.
Yeah.
And, and I think it's hard for us to accept that our heroes are are flawed. We live in kind of a post-Marvel Cinematic Universe society. We kind of expect kind of these grand scale superhero-esque moments where Iron Man or the Hulk or whoever swoops in and saves the day. And I think we were kind of projecting that as a fan base on Luke Skywalker.
Mm-hmm.
But what we got was a deeper, more, character-driven story, which I think is, in the long run, better serving.
Yeah, I will take the well thought out story, or at least that sounds snobby.
The not easy way.
Yeah,
right?
I don't want the fan service.
Right,
Don't
it would
give
be
me fan
easy.
service.
No, exactly. It would be easy for Luke to show up, take down the First Order, but then ultimately, what do we learn? We don't really learn anything about the human condition. We don't learn anything about, their inner, their inner workings.
No, we get. Oh, that was a cool look, man. Luke took down a bunch of walkers with his lightsaber and force powers. Wow, that was cool, and it probably would be cool. I mean, that was. I think what so many of us, at least myself, that's what I was calling. I said, Luke's going to take off from Canto Bight. He's going to show up on Crate, and he's going to at least, he's going to show up and open a can of whoop ass on the First Order. That was what was in my head. And I don't think I'm alone. I think I'm far from alone on that one.
Right.
And like you said, he said to Rey, and I think Chewie was there too. Like, what did you think? I was going to show up and take on the whole First Order myself? But the ironic part is he does.
Right. In a much more, in a deeper, more meaningful way. He does take him down, but more with his wits and his wisdom.
Yeah, and it's kind of for me a direct tie to what Rose says, that we don't. What does Rose say? Right before she kind of passes out after crashing the speeders with Finn, she says, we don't win by fighting what we hate, but saving what we love. Like, Luke could have showed up, I suppose, and tried to do what he could in adding to the First Order death count. But he was better served, or his services were better rendered by doing this astral projection thing and saving his friends that way. So he didn't fight those he hated, he saved those he loved. And I thought that was brilliant. Others didn't think so, and that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, we're all allowed to have different opinions. It doesn't mean one is wrong or one is right. It's just what speaks to you as a viewer and as a fan.
Yeah, we got 3 movies in the late 90s, early aughts that for a lot of people did not land. But they remain, and I think people are slowly coming around to them bit by bit as time goes on. And especially as fans who are children in that time get older and have a larger say over what's cool and what's not now. I think The Last Jedi is going to age really, really well.
In the long run, I think so. It's funny with the prequels is, I like I said, I didn't see them in the theaters. So they were kind of introduced to me as, oh, these are the worst. They're nowhere near as good as the original. and it's so funny is I went in expecting the worst, and I came out relatively surprised. I was like, they're not amazing. They're not as good as the OT, at least, comparatively, because I watched all 6 together. But I came out like, okay, I took it for what it was. It was like, I picked out what I liked, and they are what they are.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to tell this whole story of Star Wars in, say, a 2-minute stretch or a 3-minute stretch without really going into the detail or execution, I think you're telling one of the greatest stories ever. But I think what gets lost sometimes, or what doesn't land for people, is the acting or the details in the writing and stuff like that, or maybe specific effects.
Yeah, I think.
But the story, I think, is terrific.
Absolutely, I think we do get caught up in the nitpick. To get more specific into The Last Jedi, like the Carrie Fisher moment, the Leia using Force powers. For me, I always wanted to see Leia use Force powers. I thought, she's Darth Vader's daughter too. Why shouldn't she? And I think it's something that I always wanted to see. And I think some people maybe thought it looked a little silly. People say Mary Poppins. Some people called her a space witch. Like she kind of, for a split second, she kind of reminded me of Bette Midler in Hocus Pocus. But it's so funny because the first time I saw it, it seemed to go on forever. I was like, oh my God, she's flying through space. When does this end? It's a little silly. And then the second time I saw it, it moved by so quickly, it didn't bother me as much. And I think, a minor, it's such a nitpick because like in my head I could say, oh, a minor tweak here or there, maybe if they just framed it differently and shot it maybe from behind or a little more mysterious, you didn't get this big swooping shot of her flying through space, maybe it wouldn't come off so weird. So I think, some people just had an issue. I think it's just in the execution, right? I mean, that's the big complaint about the prequels, right? The story's amazing, but it's in the execution. But again, like I said, second time around, it didn't feel like it dragged as much because I was nitpicking it the first time. I just kind of, it's cool. It got its point across. It did ultimately what I wanted it to do. It was just that one shot I wasn't crazy about. But
yeah, they made some weird choices in shot selection. It's a bit weird,
right?
I love the sentiment, like the sentiment behind it. Finally seeing Leia use the Force like that. That is what I take out of that moment. Not that the fact that we got a Carrie Poppins weirdo shot. It's, to me, the scene works perfectly, especially when it's aided by John Williams' score.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man!
I mean,
and then like
go ahead.
The slow mo with Poe and Cadel Connix and Finn. I thought it worked out brilliantly. As goofy as it looked, I think it works out really well.
Well, it's funny. That shot, the wide shot of her floating, was that followed probably one of my favorite shots, which was just the close up on her face with the Leia theme playing, and you see kind of like the debris or whatever kind of forming around her as she formed this like force bubble of protection. And it was just, I thought just that one shot also I thought was a beautiful moment.
Yeah, Leia had so many good moments in this. Small subtle moments, but like classic Leia. Great lines. Yeah. Just the look on her face, the look in her eyes. It's too bad because I think Leia and Carrie Fisher, they were so primed to take the next step in this series, and it's such a pity that we're not going to get to see that.
Yeah, I don't know what I think that's also another thing is like, I thought they would do some fancy editing and resolve her story in some way. But ultimately I came out, I was like, yeah, I think that was like also one of the big questions. I was like, what are they going to do now? Like, I don't know how are they going to fix it? And does it do Leia or Carrie Fisher disservice to do a time jump and have her die off screen? I think that's something that I'm not going to know until I see the film. But
yeah,
but now I feel like that's kind of, I think we're closer and closer to getting that. Because if they're not going to CG her, if they're not going to recast her, that's kind of their only option.
Yeah, I mean, that's all I can see. I think that's all that most people can see. This is a tough one, and that this is one they had to be pulling their hair out over.
I mean, I could.
I wonder if part of JJ taking it over was that he needs some extra leeway. I doubt that Kathleen Kennedy reverses her position.
Mm-hmm.
That they're not recasting, not CGing. I doubt that happens. I suppose it's possible, but yeah, you're right. I don't know how they resolve this with. Instead of saying, I don't know if the next crawl is the First Order has been relentless and in their attacks, General Leia has been killed.
Yeah, I mean, I could see something where like the first line of the crawl is the rebels mourn the loss of their general or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, that's got to be the trickiest thing to have to deal with ever.
Yeah. It's tough. That's why I thought, maybe they would do some re-editing, and I don't know. It's tough. This is why.
It is really tough.
Why I'm not a filmmaker.
We might come back to this after as we wrap things up. But I don't know that we talked enough about Rey.
Yeah.
In our first review episode, and here it's like the central character of this trilogy, and we didn't. I don't know if that we did her service, but I feel like of all the characters, and a lot of people got a lot of screen time in this episode, Rey was kind of like on the straightest path.
Yeah.
Like, do you feel the same? Like she got there was. I don't think there's anything shocking about her that happened in this movie.
I mean, the quote-unquote shock, I guess, would be the realization of her parentage. But I think she pretty much went where we thought she was going to go after The Force Awakens.
Yeah, I mean, I think Rey's a pretty transparent character, and I don't mean that in a denigrating way. I mean, this person is pretty much the embodiment of goodness. And she wanted to kill Kylo in TFA, and in Episode 8, I guess, which for me it doesn't sit particularly well. I'm still trying to grapple with this, and so I guess I would file this in something that doesn't quite work for me.
Mm-hmm.
Is that now she's trying to save him?
Here's the thing. I feel like Rey, what I love about her, and maybe this is because I'm a social worker, I don't know, but to me, she's just pure empathy, right? She gets it. I feel like she understands people. She empathizes with people. And yes, I feel like it might have flipped like a switch for her, kind of not forgiving Kylo, but believing that she could change him. But I think what was good and what kind of makes it a little easier for me to digest is that I think if they had come face to face immediately after The Force Awakens, it would have been a battle right there. But I think because there's this separation, this like the Force is connecting us. It's almost like a blind date in a way, right? It's just like we're here, we don't know why we're here, but we can see each other and we're talking. And I think, over time, after several of those conversations, I think they could see each other as not equal, maybe equals, but as just people, right? There's no conflict. It's just a conversation.
Yeah, and she has to come to terms. I mean, I guess she is maybe realizing that for some reason the Force keeps connecting those two. The person that she really hates the most. You're a monster. And why did you do it? Why did you kill Han? Like, she's really angry with this guy. And then you're right. Like, she really empathizes with him over what happened at the Academy. Mm-hmm. And that's the point where she decides maybe he's still worth saving.
And I think part of it might be because now she's a little... I think she herself was disappointed in Luke, right? I mean, absolutely. She wanted this guy to swoop in and save her and save the galaxy. But now it's kind of like she's realizing it's kind of on her. So it's forcing her to grow up and make decisions for herself. And she's like, oh, crap, I might be alone in this. And now I kind of have to see it from a different light. That's kind of how I read it. It's like, all right, maybe I'm going to have to be a little more diplomatic about this as opposed to, jumping in with a laser sword and busting some people up.
Yeah. Yeah, like she rushes off to save Kylo in the same way that Luke rushed off to save his friends in Empire. There's one parallel between those two movies.
Right.
Yeah,
all but very different, philosophically speaking.
Yes, yeah. They're coming from different places, just
the
same actions, but different places.
Yeah.
Yeah, I lost my train of thought.
We were just talking about Rey, right? I mean, like we're just kind of. You said you didn't really explore the character too much in the last one, so I don't know. I love Rey. I really think she's probably one of my favorite heroes of not just the new trilogy, but just in general.
Yeah, she's a top 5 Star Wars character for me.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think she cracked I think we did this list in the summer. I think somebody had asked us, give me your top 5 Star Wars characters of all, and I think she had cracked my list at 5. I don't remember the rest of the list. I know Ahsoka was there, Chewie was there, Luke was there, and that's 4. I don't remember. I guess that speaks to the fluidity of the list, but yeah, that she's on the list, no doubt. Do you think that she? How does this sit with you that she went from hating this guy to wanting to save him, and then by the end again, it seems like she's closing the door? Is it are we swinging? Is the pendulum swinging too much too fast, or is her it's like literally slamming the door in his face? Sort of. I guess it had to end there, right?
But you got to think. I mean, with the weight of the situation, she doesn't really have time to keep pressing Kylo, right? I mean, she goes in, she's hopeful. He kills Snoke. Here's this one kind of ray of hope there. And then, and then quickly he's like, nope, rule the galaxy with me. Let's burn it all to the ground. Which, on a side note, also an amazing point, but we'll get to that. And I think she's just like, well, all right, if you're not coming with me now, this is kind of it, I guess. She kind of expected him to come with her. She was so convinced. And now it's like, well, the First Order's still going to be doing its thing. There's like 10 people left of the Resistance, So it's just kind of like a now or never situation. She couldn't really sit too long on it.
No, and I think, in a way, I hope she's kind of given up on him. I don't know what that would say about the character of Rey.
Mm-hmm.
But after, she didn't see what Kylo attempted to do with Luke. And I don't know that she knows that he issued the order to shoot the Falcon down out of the sky and
right.
kill her in the process. But I got to imagine that if she knew, and I presume at this point she does, she's got to know that Kylo is as off his rocker. Is she still going to say, nah, he's still redeemable? Because Leia doesn't even seem to think Kylo can come back.
No, I feel like Kylo has made his choice. Right, he's over the deep end. I forgot what I was listening to, but they said, if The Force Awakens is about identity, Last Jedi is about choices. And I think Kylo, he's pretty set in his choices. He's killed his father, he's killed his master. He's set. He knows what he wants. I don't see an Episode 9 ending with a redemption. And it's interesting. It's like, Luke is saying, oh, the Jedi has to the Jedi have to come to an end. But I feel like in the same way, the Skywalkers have to come to an end. Right? I mean, here we are. It's very cyclical, right? We talk about George Lucas with his poetry, right? Anakin, evil, dark side. Luke, light side. Back to Kylo, dark side. It's just kind of like a vicious cycle that I think is kind of part of the, what's throwing the galaxy all out of whack all the time. So I think, having Rey being a nobody, kind of ending this cycle, it works for me thematically.
Do you believe Kylo? Is Rey actually a nobody?
I tend to believe it. Also, that's based on lines in The Force Awakens, right? That's Maz Kanata. I feel like we've gotten all these illusions that Rey is a nobody. And I think the fandom, we force ourselves, no, how could she be a nobody? She has to be a somebody, But you know what?
This is the Skywalker saga. She has to be connected to somebody.
And this, but you know what? The power in the story is that she isn't a Skywalker. She's not a Solo. She's not a Kenobi. She is a Force-sensitive person who can break the mold and end this vicious cycle. And then you go back to the kids on Canto Bight, and you have the Force-sensitive boy with the broom, and it's all about, anyone can be a hero. And I love that theme.
Yeah, I think it's much more. I mean, there's some compelling stuff in making her. Okay, let's go back 2 years ago. I was convinced that she was Luke's daughter,
mm-hmm.
and he was staring his daughter right in the face, going, "I can't believe she's here." But a couple months after that, 3-4 months after that, I was done with that. I was like, no, there's no way. I don't think it makes sense anymore. Now I was believing Maz Kanata, and as the production of The Last Jedi went on, and we got little snippets here and there. Yeah, I was totally off with that. I'm like, no, I believe she's nobody.
Yeah, and I mean,
I think it's more powerful to make her nobody,
yeah,
to let her make decisions for herself and define her own path without the baggage of her family's legacy.
mm-hmm. And if people wouldn't believe that Luke would possibly kill his nephew, people would not believe that he would throw away his daughter. Right? I mean, that feels almost worse to me.
Yeah, like I could never reconcile the idea that Luke or Leia or Han, if any of those three somehow managed to be her parent, that they would leave her with Unkar Plutt.
Ugh.
Like that to me didn't make one lick of sense. How could that happen? So for Kylo to say, yeah, you were sold for drinking money by junky parents. Okay, I can buy that they would leave her with Unkar Plutt. That makes more sense. Now maybe there's more to it. Maybe there's steps in between that we don't know, but yeah, but why would he know this? Like, we know that they're connected through the Force, and we know through the novelization that he seems to recognize her. But why? I want to know. I wonder how he knows about her parents.
I feel like it was in the moment of, the kind of the Force conversations, right? I think when they touched hands, I think it kind of gave them a willing glimpse. Remember, she's like, I saw his future, while he probably saw her past. I feel like they shared.
Rey knows the truth as well.
Right, and he's like, sir, you know it's true. And she seems, kind of inclined to, yeah, you're right. But again,
yeah, I can believe that. There's some denial going on with her.
And just go back to Maz Kanata and The Force Awakens. The seeking, the longing that you seek is not behind you; it's ahead. And the people you're looking for are never coming back. And it's probably true. And Rey has to be her own person. She can't rely on a crutch of a family legacy. Or a royal lineage or what have you. She just has to rely on herself and her own choices and her own, it's about making your own destiny, kind of getting out of this cyclical, predestined, chosen one business, which I think is so much more powerful.
Yes, Steve. Yes. Some may disagree, and again, that's fine. But for me, it's so much more compelling for Rey in 2017 for what she means to so many people, boys and girls, especially girls alike, that this person does not have to be anybody special. Doesn't have to be a special bloodline for her to do special things. I think that is just so much more powerful than, well, she's a Skywalker or she's a Kenobi, which means she's gonna accomplish great things just because, not because of who she is or who her character is, but because those midichlorians or that DNA that makes her Kenobi, that's what's going to shine her through. It's the success of Rey would be given to Luke or Kenobi or Han, like whichever person she ended up being related to. It's almost, I almost feel like that person would get the credit.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. And you bring up the midichlorians. I mean, that's why people didn't like them. It predetermined your worth.
Yeah, and they've stepped away from the whole midichlorian thing, right?
Thank God.
they don't want to talk about that anymore.
No, but that's why people didn't like it.
I think that's why kyber crystals now exist as a pretty big talking point in Star Wars.
Oh yeah.
The broken Skywalker saber. We didn't really talk about that either, but talk about a visual signal that this is ending. The Skywalkers are going to be no more. The saber is finished.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't even think of it as a visual representation, but you're so right. It just snapped in half, literally. And now also she's going to have to make her own lightsaber, which I'm excited to see.
Yeah, was it Carlos who was talking about? Boy, I can't believe I already forget. But somebody was saying, yeah, the idea of Rey swinging around a double-sided lightsaber.
I think it was Carlos. If it was Corey, I'm sorry, Corey.
I apologize to whoever said that to me, but I'll take that.
Yeah,
that seems pretty cool.
I mean, just the visual style. I mean, yeah, that's her fighting style, is the staff. She has to make something that is part of her identity and her own style. I would love that.
So, what else worked for you in this movie? Let's talk about let's go right back to the start. Let's go to Poe and his bravado, which made for some cool moments. Great opening moments with I think there was some real drama in those opening shots with a single X-wing going up against a dreadnought.
Yeah,
Like that. Beautiful opening shots.
I love Poe the Flyboy hothead. I think it's phenomenal. Again, a film about choices, right? Leia's telling him, "No, this needs to end. We need to go." And he's like, "No, we could take down this dreadnought. We can do it." And now all his fighters are dead. All the bombers are dead. The majority of the X-wings, all those fighters were dead. And now he has to kind of live with that. But that scene with Rose's sister, that was very Rogue One to me. And it was so intense. I loved that.
Yeah, that was really well done. Was the idea that she was kind of paralyzed from that fall, just laying flat on her back?
I imagine, like, fall on your back, you probably hit your head. She's probably like, you probably can't get up right away after that. And then her trying to kick the button down. Just a very cool, tense moment because, the bomber's approaching, right? There's really no time to go up and climb, right? How is she going to get this button to her the quickest way possible to get this done? Had she attempted to climb the ladder, I'm sure she would have been shot down.
Yeah, I mean, she did give it a shot, and that's why she ended up flat on her back.
Right. I mean, a take two would only, seal her defeat.
Yeah, no, that was a great, really tense sequence. And yeah, like going back to Poe's decisions, made for some cool movie moments. A lot of things blow up, which we like in Star Wars, but there were actual consequences to this. Not only for him as he gets demoted, but for the Resistance. Like his choice to press ahead with his attack got them decimated.
Yeah,
and it was a boneheaded choice.
Mm-hmm. And this is where I kind of started to compare Star Wars to Battlestar Galactica, which I don't know. Are you familiar with the property?
A little bit.
So I've never seen the '80s version, but in the 2004 2005 reboot, it was all about the Cylons and the humans, and the Cylons destroyed the humans' homeworld, and it was pretty much just a 4-season long space chase. Right? They were just constantly on their tail. And in that, the Cylons were able to track the humans through hyperspace. So it was just kind of like a cat and mouse game throughout. So that's kind of where I got this vibe, where it's just like the First Order is now so overwhelming, and they're just kind of, that story kept us in space, and I really appreciate that. And it was very Galactica did a really cool job of just kind of the on-ship politics. Who's in charge? Who orders who? There were plenty of mutinies on the show, that's for sure. So I kind of love that turn in the story.
Yeah, well, what you're saying is somewhat registering with me. Although I've only watched a handful of episodes and I followed it sort of at arm's length. I do intend to watch the whole thing at some point. I have all the episodes.
But
how do you feel about Poe being spoken down to by Holdo? This is kind of where dude bros get their backup, and I don't like Holdo because of the way she treated Poe. And
no, I mean, Poe, again, I love the character, but he made this choice, and it ultimately was, I don't know if I would say the wrong choice, but it ended up with a lot of people dead. And I think he definitely needed to get put in his place. So I tend to err on the side of Holdo there, and I think, not because I wanted to see Poe get talked down to, but I think it was important to his growth. I mean, Poe needs to learn kind of a sense of responsibility. I mean, they're molding, we find out in the end that Holdo and Leia really kind of had this plan for Poe and the leadership, but they're really trying to mold Poe into a leader. And I think he needs to learn these hard lessons so that way he can really properly lead the new rebellion.
Yeah, not every solution can be solved by just blowing something up. And
exactly.
By the end, I think he figured that part out. You know, they're chasing down, or they're facing down those ATM-6, the oncoming First Order. The attack is not going to work. Their plan is just not going to work, and he calls it, peel off. A Poe from earlier in that movie would have said, no, keep going, and he probably would have gotten everybody killed. This time he says, abort. So there's definitely growth in that 2.5-hour movie for Poe.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think it was nice to see Poe kind of get stripped down a little bit, and not only in just getting dressed down with a tongue lashing, but also demoted, slapped in the face, stripped of his rank a little bit. And again, like there's a lot of dude bros out there rolling their eyes, but hey, sometimes you need to learn some harsh lessons from people that maybe you're not accustomed to listening to.
Hear, hear.
So were you a fan of the Holdo character?
I did like her. I think the only thing that disappointed me was that we're not going to get more of her. Her kind of being a one and done character. I think it would have been nice, kind of, in hindsight, knowing now where we are with Leia, it would be nice to have her kind of in the leadership role, alongside Poe, perhaps. But I think her moment at the end, the big sacrifice, that is probably, and the way that was shot, I mean, I think I don't know a single person that says they did not find that amazing or beautifully done. Well, I don't, that is not one of the complaints. As many as there are, that is not one of them.
For as subjective as things like movies are as a piece of art, I think that shot is probably objectively cool.
Just the sound design, the literal lack of sound, and just the visual. I had chills. Like I could feel the hairs on my arm, raising from that.
Right, because when we learned about the situation in this movie between the Resistance and First Order, how are the Resistance going to take out this ship? Either you just keep running from it, or they find a way to take it down. Is that sabotage? That's kind of lame. How do you take out a ship that is, I think it was like 60 kilometers across?
Mm-hmm.
It's just a massive beast. How do you take that out? Oh, here's how. You get a character to give the ultimate sacrifice and ram a ship named the Radis right through the heart of it at light speed. Like, that is cool stuff.
Incredible. Now, I know kind of the big opinion is that that possibly should have gone to Admiral Akbar. Where do you fall on that? Rather than him dying in the bridge.
Yeah, I did comment that we lost Akbar and it was just sort of a throwaway thing. That other, I think, commander, I can't remember her name. Oh, Commander something. She says, we lost the entire Resistance leadership, including Admiral Akbar. And that's it for Akbar? Like, he's just quickly written out? Fan favorite Akbar? Really? Yeah, you're right. It could have been cool to give him that moment, but hey, I guess there's 1,000 ways this could have gone, right?
Right. I mean, there's endless ways. And this is just where they landed. And unlike the whatever the 10,000 people who signed that petition, whatever it's up to now, it's not going to change. It's in the can. It's in theaters.
Oh, geez, no, that petition's like it was yesterday. It was at 30,000.
Right. That's not how this works. That's not how Hollywood works.
No, it's not happening. But let's not talk about that. Yeah, I think regarding Holdo, I think Carlos said it best. I can't put it any better. That he disliked her for as long as they intended him to dislike her, and that's kind of the way I feel. Like, by the time you realize her plan, okay, I got it now. Because though I was suspicious of her. She doesn't look the part of Resistance here. Is she maybe a double agent? Is she in cahoots with somebody from Canto Bight? Is she? How is this person fitting in? Like, she just doesn't look the part.
Mm-hmm.
But once she offers up her life for the Resistance, oh, all right, she's totally on our side.
Yeah.
And they have that moment with Leia and Holdo about talking about Poe and how, yeah, I like him. Like, he's a troublemaker. He needs to learn. He needs to grow up, but I like him.
I mean, I know some people were put off by her just visually, the character design. But, I mean, when you think back to the original trilogy, right, we're used to kind of like this scruffy, dirty kind of rebellion, but then you see Mon Mothma and she's beautiful in this flowy white gown and, you know, doesn't look like she fits, per se. So I think, you know, I don't know. I didn't quite understand the hang up on her design. You know, we get characters that don't look like they fit, but ultimately they have a role to play. You know, it seemed like a silly nitpick to me.
Yeah. I mean, I admit when I first saw her, I was like, she doesn't look Star Wars, but there's a purpose to the choices that they made with this character.
Right. I mean, I know she also has a whole backstory in Leia, Princess of Alderaan, too. So I know some of that is explained, and unfortunately, some of this stuff has to be relegated to extended canon, which is fine, you know, but not everyone's going to read that stuff.
Yeah, most people won't.
Yeah.
How about the humor overall in the movie? Actually, you know what? Before we talk about the humor, let's touch on Rose and Finn a little bit more. Yeah, let's stick with Rose. I mean, the breath of fresh air character for me in this movie. Kelly Marie Tran was just terrific.
Oh, her intro is probably one of my favorite intros of any character. That first scene was just it was fun to see those two interact and kind of the beats in their conversation, right? Just kind of like, I had to tase 2-3 other people, you know, for escaping, and Finn trying to cover up that he's, you know, oh, I'm just checking these escape pods. And I love that banter. And to see her kind of still mourning her sister, I thought was very humanizing, and it was just a great introduction.
Yeah, I agree. I think she was just tremendous throughout. And I thought the writing of that scene, their initial meeting, was so reminiscent of when Rey and Finn first met.
Yeah.
Like I'm with the Resistance. I'm with the Resistance. Like it's Finn putting on a show again.
Yeah, actually, I didn't even make that comparison at first, but I definitely see that.
He's just sitting there trying to put on an act. Oh no. I am with the Resistance. I am just checking out these escape pods. I'm not actually leaving, except he's full of it. That's exactly what he was planning on doing.
Oh yeah. But I mean, I'll say, you know, aside from their kind of initial conversation, this subplot, you know, I know a lot of people had issues with, you know, and this was also for me one of the arcs, not so much of the characters, but just the Canto Bight stuff in general. It was not my favorite. And again, I appreciate the story and the message, you know, war profiteering and yada yada yada, but I think it's, you know, it kind of falls in the execution for me.
Yeah, a lot of people weren't crazy about that sequence, and I guess there's a reason why we didn't see a ton of it in the marketing, because there just wasn't a lot of that planet in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, it is so quick, you know. I mean, again, you know, it's easy to kind of get hung up on it, but you know, ultimately, you know, it's not that much of the movie itself, so I feel like it doesn't take away too much.
Yeah, it is the key sequence for Rose, and in characterizing her and where her mindset is about the haves and the have-nots, and you know, just the dirty elites and you know, the downtrodden, stuff like that. And also, I mean, this was why Holdo. I mean, the reason why Holdo doesn't tell everybody her plan, from a from Rian Johnson's standpoint, is I got to give Finn and Rose something to do. Because if they know the plan, if Holdo, which as a vice admiral, she doesn't have to tell anybody anything.
No.
She doesn't owe Poe the information. She doesn't owe that to anybody. She's the vice admiral. She'll tell who she wants. And if she does say, guys, here's the plan, well, then there's no reason for Finn and Rose to leave. And they sit in the cafeteria on the ship and just wait.
Right. I mean, they needed
so
something.
By not knowing the plan, okay, she's not going to tell us. You guys go take care of your plan. I mean, I think that's how that works.
I think what I would have liked to have seen, again, too little, too late. I mean, can't change it. But, I wasn't crazy about Maz Kanata's little cameo. I feel like I needed more from her character as opposed to, all right, here are the clues, here's your mission, go do this. I thought...
Yeah, I wanted to see more of her.
I think it would have been cool if she was on the mission with them, to be quite honest. I mean, if she was like, I know this guy on Canto Bight, come meet me there. I thought that would have been cool.
Yeah, I mean, what happened to Maz after The Force Awakens? I mean, at one point in the trailers, we saw that Maz was actually giving the saber to Leia.
Mm-hmm.
So, in my mind, Maz was with the Resistance. She was
Right.
She was hanging around with them after her castle was destroyed, just waiting for her next development to take place. Now I guess she's probably not one to let the grass grow under her feet, so she moved right along. But yeah, I agree. I don't think it would have been awful for her to be like, Finn, Rose, let's go, and they take off to Canto Bight.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I would have had a problem with that.
I mean, it just would have given her character something to do. I feel like, that she was really built. I mean, she was probably one of my favorite moments of The Force Awakens, one of my favorite parts. I would have loved to have seen some more development there. Because she's, she has such this grandiose, just vibe about her. This kind of all-knowing, she's no Jedi, but she knows the Force, and there's just so much mystery about her, and I would have liked to have seen just a little more of that executed.
Yeah, I mean, she's kind of like Yoda, right? There's a mischievousness there,
Mm-hmm.
and there's wisdom there, and I definitely would have liked to have seen that explored a little bit more.
And I'm sure we'll probably get more in Episode 9. I feel like with the direction going back to J.J. Abrams, he's going to kind of pick up the pieces of what he laid down. And, like Maz Kanata, maybe that's more like, all right, that's JJ's character. That's not Rian Johnson's character. And I feel like we're going to get maybe more of these threads that JJ laid out kind of come back full circle. So that's kind of my hope for Maz.
That would be nice. I would like to see a little bit more of Maz next time around. What about Phasma? You're a big Phasma fan. How do you feel about the way she's been handled, not just in the movies, but as a whole, including the books and comics?
It's so unfortunate because you have someone like Gwendolyn Christie who's amazing. You have a character design that is so cool. It was, it's not Phasma's fault, right? I feel like it's definitely, it's in the writing. It was in the execution of the character. I really wanted to see, her really be kind of, the emotional, the ghost, the antagonist to Finn's development. And it's there. It's just, Finn's growing and then she's just kind of like the final boss of his story, right? It's just like he gets to her at the end, defeats her, and now he's a new person. Or he's growing.
Yeah, he's slayed his past. He's beaten his dragon.
Right. But like, it's so unfortunate. Actually, I don't know if you remember this. Back when The Force Awakens came out, you guys did kind of like an open source, like, hey, if you guys want to send in an opening crawl, we'll read it, yada yada yada. And that was kind of like right before I joined in with you guys in the Tumbling Saber. But for my opening crawl, I think one of my paragraphs was like, the First Order has sent Phasma after Finn, right? And I think it would have been cool to have her kind of be more of like, like a bounty hunter type, like his literal past trying to catch up to him, as opposed to just her sitting around the ship waiting for Finn to show up and beat her in 2 minutes.
Yeah, which again is a little bit strange. here's this kid fresh out of coma, and he takes out Captain Phasma, the baddest stormtrooper who's ever lived. Like,
Yeah.
okay,
Ugh.
made it cool. It made for a cool moment. I'll give Finn that. I love Finn, and if I have to pick a winner, who do I like to see win that fight? I'm gonna give it to Finn every time. But I feel like there could have been more of the specter of Phasma looming for Finn across the trilogy.
Yeah. I think that, yeah, he would have been better served had she been his ghost throughout the 3 movies. And like that would have been a nice, fuller, complete arc. Because now it's kind of like he slayed his demons, and now he's just kind of gonna help take down the First Order, I guess. So there's really kind of like the emotional arc is kind of done from what I see. Unless there's more to it. But it's just
what's left for Finn to do? Of course, you can give him something to do, but naturally, it's taking out Phasma, which was the kind of the big thing that you would expect from Finn going all the way back to TFA. So I thought that was. I'm actually more upset about Phasma's death than I am about Snoke's. I feel like Snoke's death, which we'll get to, made more sense than Phasma's.
Oh yeah,
which maybe is a bit of a hot take.
No, I tend to agree with you. I think just as far as serving the character development, yeah, but also to be fair, this new trilogy is so packed with characters that I feel like some things need to end earlier, because now that we're going into the finale of the story, the focus really is Rey and Kylo, right? So I feel like that's where we're going to spend most of our time. And had they finished up any of the other stories in episode 9, it probably would have felt rushed within those 2.5 hours.
Yeah, we'd be saying, "Oh, geez, I didn't spend enough time on Kylo and Rey. All this build up, and they only got like 2 scenes together."
Exactly. So I feel like we're...
Yeah, no, I did like the thinning of the herd, at least on the villain side. Mm-hmm. It's going to put a lot of increased focus on Kylo, and I guess to a lesser degree Hux,
mm-hmm.
and maybe whatever other bad guys they want to slip into the mix here late in the game. But yeah, for Phasma, I feel like the character was really unevenly treated. I mean, we know that she rolled over in TFA, and that was like embarrassing. And they tried to correct that in the 4-part miniseries by having her track down or cover her tracks, I suppose, mm-hmm. in a very ruthless way. And then the novel, which I have not read, and then back to the screen where she shows up and summarily gets dismissed. Like the stormtrooper plays t-ball with her head.
Yeah.
and she's gone. Or I mean, maybe she's not, right?
Yeah, maybe. Should be one.
Maybe
one
JJ says, "No, I love Phasma. I'm bringing her back. She'll be a bit dinged up, but I'm bringing her back." Because I feel like JJ, when they designed Phasma and they said, "Oh man, this is cool. Like we got to get this in the movie. We don't have a part for her. Just shoehorn her. She's somewhere. She's a high-ranking stormtrooper. Done. Boom." Like, I feel like they put her in because she looked really cool. Not that she served a specific purpose.
Right, and that's certainly the wrong way to go for a character. You want to do story over look. Always.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like I'm bummed that they didn't do that character better justice. Now, a lot of people may disagree, and I know a lot of people will. But yeah, for me, the character just felt totally flat. But let's talk about, let's stay on with the First Order, and we'll talk about the Snoke and Kylo dynamic. How shocked were you to see Kylo do what he did and take out his boss?
Yeah, I was, again, just a moment where I was speechless watching it. I was like, oh, okay, so I guess, because, in our mind, with TFA, is like, okay, here's our emperor figure, right? Here is the puppet master. Right, and to see that cut down, halfway through the trilogy, is definitely shocking. But in hindsight, when you look back at Kylo's growth, it makes sense. Snoke, again, that was another one of the fan built up questions, right? Like, who is Snoke? Again, but also this is kind of like, this ties into also just that legacy, right? I mean, does Snoke really need to be so and so or this person or that person? I mean,
Well, yeah, this is where I feel like fandom. This is on fans who are not happy about Snoke and his death. Well, they built up this character of Snoke and they did this and that, and no, they didn't. There's been no build up to Snoke. They've gone out of their way to say his backstory is not important. He's not a Sith. He's not Plagueis. For all intents and purposes, Snoke was a nobody. All we knew is that he was Kylo's boss and he was really powerful in the Force. That's it. We weren't promised any more with this guy.
right. And I think what's really cool is, I mean, it is kind of like a misdirect, right? Or just kind of you get this grandiose sense from him. But, ultimately he means nothing because the story is about Kylo and Rey. There's always going to, I think another theme is, I mean, there's always going to be a big bad. There's always going to be something. And the light comes up to meet it, like Snoke said. Like, it's a cycle. So I kind of just like that. It's like, I'm kind of at a loss for words there, but like, it's a really cool development. It's different. It's it's a different kind of villain, right?
Yeah, for once it's not the puppet master.
Yeah.
In the driver's seat. Now it's like this unhinged lunatic at the with his finger on the trigger of this huge army. What is he going to do? Like, how unpredictable is Kylo? He's been completely all over the map. So what is he going to do in episode 9 now that he has all of these seemingly limitless resources? And I think that makes things so much more interesting than, well, his boss is still there. He's still a jerk, and he's still bullying Kylo left, right, and center, so I know how this plays out. Kylo's going to turn on Snoke at some point. Like, it really leads you by the nose down this very predictable path.
Exactly. We don't want to I mean, again, one of the big complaints about Force Awakens. Oh, too much like New Hope. Too much like the original trilogy. So, but I mean, so if they went with this rule of 2, you're going to take down the apprentice and then take down the puppet master, it's too much of the same, and I think they really needed to set themselves apart here.
Yeah, and I think they've done that in a very obviously done in a very stunning way, but I think it also in a very, very much a way that makes sense, where you have Kylo who's doing nothing but trying to find some belonging, just like Rey. And he's constantly being rejected by these father figures in his life, and he just keeps killing them. It's Han. He killed Han. Now he's killed Snoke. He wanted to do his best to kill out Luke, who I guess you could argue what was a father figure for at least a time in his life.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's
now where does he focus his hatred now?
So that's the thing, right? I mean, he has all this hatred, and now he's a loose cannon. I mean, that's some of the... I mean, just think about our own, Earth's history. World War II. All these, great tragedies. It's these horrible people with all this wrath, and it's just blindly shot out. And it does destruction to anyone, anywhere. So here's this person who's just kind of unleashed on the galaxy with just all this built up hate and sense of betrayal. And he just wants revenge. And honestly, I think he just wants revenge against the world.
Yeah. And that was the story we were given about Snoke, is that he just wants to lash out. He just wants to, the pain that was caused to him, he just wants to take that same pain and turn it around on everybody else tenfold. I feel like Kylo's maybe back in that same spot, which I don't know if that means he's going to be prone to make the same arrogant mistake that Snoke did in ignoring what's going on right in front of him, right? Because I think in again, one of the most divisive moments of this movie, when Kylo is turning the saber in his hand, and Snoke is doing like the play-by-play. Oh, and he turns the saber and he's about to like press the button, pull the trigger, and make his kill, and Kylo's doing this like sleight of hand that Snoke doesn't see. Yeah, I thought that moment was, again, maybe I'm being a homer, but I thought that was pretty slick.
I don't know. I loved it. I'm curious if there was any puppet mastering on Snoke's part there. Right? I mean, at this point, earlier in the film, Snoke was really pushing Kylo. Take off that mask, and, he was really berating him. It almost felt like he was pushing him purposefully. So you got to think, we are getting... So another thing with The Last Jedi is we are getting a lot of new Force powers, a lot of new things that can be done with the Force. We don't necessarily know... to this moment, we understand that generally light side users can become Force ghosts, and that's it. But in almost like an opposite way, it could be interesting that if Snoke found a way to transcend on the dark side, and if maybe dark side users can only communicate with dark side users after they've passed. So I'd be curious if maybe it was Snoke's plan to die. I think that would be an interesting twist.
That would be so cool.
Because now we have Luke is dead and mentoring Rey from beyond, most likely. That's what I'm going to assume. And then possibly Snoke dead, mentoring Kylo in the end. Possibly.
That's a pretty cool idea, because previously, Sith could not come back in any type of ghost way. But this guy's not Sith, right?
He's not Sith, and also, we assume that Sith can't come back in a ghost form because we haven't seen it yet. Also, our only lens of reference have been light side users. So a dark force user isn't going to come to them, but maybe if there's already a dark side user who's alive, and now that we have Kylo as like a point person, a point character, we're following him just as much as we're following Rey, maybe we'll see some of that.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Did you, so when I first watched that scene where Kylo, I don't even know what the word is, but bisects Snoke, there was a second where I thought, like, Snoke is gonna like almost laugh this off. Did you get that?
I didn't believe that he was dead. Again, I think that's just how we're trained as moviegoers, and we just assume the big bad is until the end, right? So there was like, I couldn't trust him. I couldn't trust what I was watching, and I think also that's part of what led to a lot of people's disappointment in the film in general. It was also new. We didn't know what we could trust. So yeah, I thought, oh, this is just kind of, this is a fleeting thing, and Snoke is just going to be like, yeah, whatever.
you traitorous little apprentice. Like, yeah, he would just, or maybe he had some force power to heal himself, and the lightsaber would have meant nothing.
But that turn, right, as soon as Snoke died, and now we got Kylo and we got Rey after the Praetorian guards. Is that?
Oh, those poor Praetorian guards.
Yeah, but that moment, right, back to back, I was like, I'm watching this, I'm like, we're only in the second movie of the trilogy. Is this happening? What am I watching? This is so cool, but I'm confused. It was just so many conflicting emotions during that battle, but it was so cool to see and visually stunning.
Oh god, it was visually so cool. So cool. Did you think that Rey and Kylo were going to fight at that moment? They're standing face to face, and I think Daisy Ridley did a good job there. Like, she's looking at Kylo, and I didn't see any, like, wink, wink, like, let's take these guys down. I saw, like, what's he going to do? And then they just like the shot pans out and they both go back to back, and I was like, oh, money shot, perfect.
It really was just a great tension build. Even in that split second, we were like, I don't know what they're gonna do. Are they gonna fight each other? Just like you said. And yeah, I don't know. It just took so many turns. The beats in that scene were just so good, and they roped me in.
Yeah, because I was talking about in our first review episode, like the Rolodex of information I have in my brain. And what I know about this movie, or what I think I know. And there's Rey and Kylo, and they're teaming up here. Now, is this because this is a new allegiance, or is this sort of a union of convenience in this moment? And I'm trying to put it into context and looking ahead. What else do I know about this movie? And I don't know that there's any further shots of Kylo. Oh, no, actually, no, that's not true. There's the shot of him storming the mine on Crate.
Right. Well, we knew Crate was coming, right? So I feel like, we knew that there was still going to be conflict down the line.
Yeah, so in my mind, I'm like, okay, this is not going to last. How this union falls apart, yeah, but it couldn't have lasted. And I thought about seeing Kylo's shuttle just hovering there over the salt flats of Crate, going, yeah, I mean, this really can't last. But they've kind of crossed that threshold. This is what I'm thinking in that moment. This is before Kylo goes full madman. They've crossed this threshold. They've worked together. Have they ironed this out? Are they close allies at this point? But again, Rian Johnson kind of kicking out the legs from under us and really putting us on unequal footing. Like we don't know where this is going.
Nope, not at all. And it's great because it was obvious Rey had no idea where this was going either. But she was kind of going with the flow, going with the punches. But that moment of like, when Kylo was trying to convince her to come with him and burn the past down, and she's just like, don't do this, Ben. Just that acting on her part was so, it was so visceral. I loved it.
I think one of the best things about this movie, and to me, there's so much to love about this movie. The acting is just so good across the board. Like Rian Johnson pulled everybody's best out of them, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I couldn't even tell you who put on the best performance, because there really were. I mean, I think between Mark Hamill, Daisy Ridley, and Adam Driver, I think you get 3 world-class performances there. And then beyond that, you have Carrie Fisher and Oscar Isaac. Even Donald Gleason. He was pretty good too. I mean, not to the same level as the first 3, but right across. Like, I can't think of one person who I would go, they kind of mailed this in.
Nope. Everyone was giving it their all. It was kind of looking back, and now I feel like I got to see it a third time now. But it's just everyone really put so much love into it, I think.
Oh yeah, I think so. And again, I'm still kind of in this honeymoon period with this movie, but
I mean, we say honeymoon, but I mean, I think we do a pretty good job, I think, at analyzing it for what it is, right? I mean, we could still admit its faults and love it at the same time.
Yeah, yeah, sure. I mean, I'll be honest at this point, I don't see a ton of faults in this movie. Like, there's some things I could kind of nitpick a little bit over.
Yeah,
but
I mean, the faults for me are nitpicks too, right? It's not these grand, structural faults in the plot or anything that I could say.
Yeah, no, I like, a lot of people have varying complaints, and power to them. So many, I look at them and I'm like, are we talking about the same movie? Like, am I an idiot? Why don't I see at all what you're seeing?
Right.
Like, we both love, like, I'm reading somebody's post on Facebook or a review online, and I'm like, am I just dumb? Am I naive? Am I a bad movie watcher, or too much of a homer? Like, why do I not understand what you're writing? And I guess, I don't know, maybe it just comes down to subjectivity. Or if something lands with you, then it works for you, and if not, then it wasn't to your taste. That's it.
Right, it's subjectivity.
Some people like broccoli and some people don't.
Right, it's subjectivity, but it's also, again, I think fundamentally it's expectations versus reality. For a lot of, I think some people just have an easier time going with the flow versus I had all these theories, none of them were right. I don't quite, or just or the discomfort with the unfamiliar, right? Star Wars doesn't usually go this way.
No.
So
Yeah, I think that's a big part of this, that there's supposed to be a Star Wars checklist. There's supposed to be a list of things that you get in a Star Wars movie, and in a lot of ways, we did not get some of those things in this movie. In fact, we would get the opposite.
But I feel like we also did. I mean, Ryan also did tug on those nostalgia heartstrings. I mean, we haven't even talked about Yoda yet, or the Obi-Wan Kenobi message.
This Sidious was mentioned. The soundtrack, which is littered with cues and callbacks to the OT.
Mm-hmm.
It's stuffed with them. There could be more OT stuff than new stuff in the soundtrack.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, what did you think of the soundtrack, quickly?
Briefly, I think my favorite piece is I think it's called The Spark. It's on Crate, and it's just those few fleeting notes of the Imperial March, and it's beautiful. It was in the trailer too. That's probably my favorite bit of the soundtrack. I think it was so beautiful, under kind of like the newer soundtrack. It was gorgeous. What about you?
Oh boy, I liked the Jedi steps on a just amped up just a little bit. Hearing Yoda's theme again, that really hit home with me. And Rey's theme always works for me, no matter what. Leia's theme, that came up at least twice in the soundtrack. I could take that all day long. And you know what I think? I think really took a step forward in this film is March of the Resistance.
Yes.
I think that took 10 steps forward in this soundtrack.
I love the Resistance
so much grander.
Theme. Yes.
So I liked it. Actually, my son loves that song. He loves that cue to death. And it was always like, oh, it's pretty cool, I guess. But in this movie, John Williams really cranked it up.
Absolutely.
What did you think of the overall frequency of the use of humor, the type of humor? Did that work for you, or was it a bit much?
Not all of the humor hit, but none of it was so jarring to me that it took me out of the film. I thought the Hux thing with Poe, the holding for Hux, I thought was hysterical.
Agreed.
For me, it's in line with Poe, right? I mean, do you talk first? Do I talk first? Like, it's there. It's his way of stalling. It's his way of banter. Oh, I'm not afraid of you. That's what he does, and I thought that was hysterical.
I think the only way that would have been funnier is if he had called him a pasty ginger.
Oh, I would have died. I know some people say it's too much Earth humor, but I don't know. I have to look back at the original trilogy and how much of the 70s seeped into Star Wars. I mean, go back and watch it. It's a very 70s movie.
Yeah. This wasn't a humorous part, but there is Holdo's line where she says Godspeed, rebels, and people didn't like Godspeed. If you don't like Godspeed for whatever reason,
Maker speed? I don't know. What would you say? I mean,
then you can't like Han's line of "Then I'll see you in hell."
Right.
Like if you have a problem with God in Star Wars, then you should have a problem with hell as well.
Absolutely. I think it's just because it's Han. No one's going to say something bad about Harrison Ford. It's
of course no.
It's a nostalgia thing. That's really what it is. There were a couple of moments though, just about the humor. I think the Porg hitting the window was a little silly for me. The BB-8 on the walker I thought was a little silly. What else?
I come at both of those from different angles because yes, for me, if if I was not a father, I'd be like, okay, I know who that's aimed at. But now my kids have seen the Porg up against the window, and they just squeal
love
with
it.
glee every time they see it.
Yeah.
I go, and yeah, it works for kids, and that's who that was for.
Exactly. I mean, Star Wars is for everybody, right? I mean, like, this isn't Deadpool, right? It's not going to be an R-rated superhero flick for adults only. This is a family film. It could get dark, sure, but it's also going to have those moments of just silly humor, and it's okay. If it's not for you, then just, I don't know, you don't have to fast forward it. Just watch the movie, and, it's over in a second. It's not,
Learn to like it.
It's not going to, I don't know. It's not going to shorten your life by watching it.
Definitely not. It might actually extend your life if you learn to laugh a little bit.
Yeah, people just need to cheer up. Cheer up.
Loosen up. Have some fun.
It's a movie. We love it to death, but it's a movie.
Did we hit on all the biggest people here?
We didn't really talk about Yoda. That's the only thing. I loved that scene. Something funny I did during the second viewing. I kind of I love watching audience reactions, and I was kind of a little bit of a creep about it. I pretend to stretch, and I just kind of peeked at the seats behind me, and just to see how everyone was in awe of seeing Puppet Yoda on the screen again. It felt like Empire Strikes Back. It felt just seeing that relationship again between Yoda and Luke. You could see kind of the magic resonating in people's eyes. It was that was such a transcending experience. Not to sound all hoity-toity about it, but just to see that movie magic working on a giant auditorium full of people, and it was just quiet. People were just taking it in and loving every second of Yoda being on the screen again.
Yeah, not to belabor the point, because I said it in the last episode, but I feel like Rian Johnson nailed the dialogue. And I don't know if maybe Frank Oz helped him pen out that scene, but to me it just feels like Luke and Yoda were right back on Dagobah.
Yeah.
It just felt so natural between the two of them. And I feel like Yoda really dropped a lot of gold in those scenes, or at least in that one scene. It was just unbelievable that the first time nothing even registered, because I was like, whoa, Yoda just dropping wisdom bombs everywhere. Second time I took in a little bit more, but I almost feel like the whole movie is like that, where there's just a lot of dense dialogue that you need to. It might take multiple viewings for it all to soak in.
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest takeaway from Yoda for me was just that, failure is the greatest lesson, right? I mean, that is the point, right? Because this whole film is about choices, right? So our choices might be wrong, but it's okay if we learn from them and move on. That's the point. There's nothing wrong with failure. You have to learn from it. And I know a lot of people, I mean, I know James specifically, said the Jedi weren't supposed to fail, right? I mean, there's this idealistic view of the Jedi, but here you have Yoda saying, again, no one is perfect. The Jedi failed. You had a failure, and that's okay. We just have to pass on what we've learned.
Yeah, exactly. And the end of the conversation, we are what they grow beyond.
Yeah, the master is what I forget exactly, but yeah, they are what we grow beyond. Yeah, I thought that was beautiful.
That is the burden of a master, or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. That's where the master part came in. Beautiful. I think probably. I almost hate to say it, but probably one of my favorite Yoda moments, right? Even beyond Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. Oh God, I love that. I love that scene so much.
There's a common question in Star Wars fandom, if you were going to get a Star Wars tattoo, a line of Star Wars dialogue tattooed on you, that line is going to be on that list. If it's not in the next few months, it will be in the next few years. That line will be part of that conversation.
I now I wonder if we're gonna get Yoda again, even for a fleeting moment in episode 9. Like I definitely see Luke coming to Rey. I feel like that has to happen. I don't think we've seen the end of Mark Hamill.
No.
I think there's a void there that needs to be filled, right? Unfortunately, with Carrie Fisher out of the picture, I feel like we need a sense of the original trilogy still there.
Yeah, they got to give us just one last bite.
It would be interesting if kind of how Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Yoda came to Luke. It would be cool to see maybe Rey see Luke. Maybe if she sees Yoda. I'm still banking on hopefully seeing Obi-Wan. I would love to see Ewan McGregor done up like why am I blanking on his name?
Alec Guinness.
Alec Guinness. I would love to see Ewan McGregor look like Alec Guinness, which I think is very possible. They just got to do what they did for the prequels and just age him.
Yeah, Rian Johnson did touch on that. And people said, why wasn't he in this? He said, well, of course I would have loved to have gotten Kenobi in there, but I would have had to have used Ewan McGregor, and it just, I think he kind of rationalized it as in, it would have looked weird.
Right. I mean...
And don't quote me, but something to that effect that, yeah, it's if Alec Guinness was still around, sure. But, it's two people that have not really interacted together before, so, nah.
I mean, they could always CG Alec Guinness like they did with Tarkin. That's an option. But I feel like even using Ewan McGregor, I mean, it's not any weirder than throwing Hayden Christensen in Return of the Jedi. I feel like that was weird. But
yeah,
I feel like this makes a little more sense. I mean, I feel like enough time has passed in real time. And technology is a little better. I mean, makeup is amazing. There's great things that they can do with aging Ewan McGregor.
It could. Maybe it's something that'll be in the cards for 9. I mean, we want Ewan McGregor back on screen really badly.
Right. And
maybe this is the place to do it.
And if we get a Kenobi film, it's even more of a... I mean, it's pretty... I mean, people pretty much are in agreement on he was perfect in that role. Right? I feel like it could be forgiven to have an older Ewan McGregor play, Obi-Wan. I feel like it makes... I mean, I can't imagine there being a backlash.
Oh, there'd be some. I mean, come on.
I mean, there'd be some, but not a 50,000 signed petition.
You never know.
That's my wishful thinking.
Okay, let's start to wind things down here a little bit. Where is this going? Because now I think one of the coolest and healthiest things about this movie is that we are without a compass. There's no roadmap. If we were afraid that JJ was going to rehash The Last Jedi for Episode 9, which was a huge concern given the petitions that are out there to have him removed as director, that's gone. I mean, Rian Johnson took left JJ in a place where fundamentally you can't remake Episode 6. It's impossible. So where are we headed here?
So starting the speculation train, I would love to see, because we got nothing of the Knights of Ren in this film. We got a reference, I think, from Snoke, if I remember correctly. But I would love to see maybe they're off somewhere, and Kylo maybe taps into that as a final resource. Because he's going to need some people on his side, right? Not just the First Order, because it's going to be too much of the same.
And there's also the Luke said that Kylo took off with a handful of his students and killed the rest.
Right. So
there's that theory that the people that Kylo took off with are the Knights of Ren. They're Luke's former Jedi apprentices.
I mean, that's what I assumed with The Force Awakens. They were the people that he took with him. I mean, that's what I was thinking since, a couple years ago. So I think it's very possible. I mean, I know some people thought they might have been the guards, but I feel like the guards weren't Force, wielding. So that kind of got ruled out in my head canon. I don't think that's a possibility.
I agree.
But see, so it also depends on how much time unfolds, right? Like, I don't think enough time is going to pass where the kids on Canto Bight are old enough to be trained. So, but visually speaking, I would love to see Rey with Padawans versus Kylo with the Knights of Ren. That, I think, visually would be really cool. It would be a really cool way to kind of send off to the future, right? We have this new slew of Jedi that we can follow. I think that would be a powerful statement, right? Visually speaking, right? The Jedi are back, in whatever different form, different doctrine, whatever it is. But I feel like too much time would have to pass for that to happen. So,
do you necessarily think that we are jumping ahead significantly in time? Like, I would say, like, a couple months, a couple weeks is not a significant jump. Do you think we're going 2+ years into the future?
I would like to see that, because I mean, it makes sense between 7 and 8 to have like a week. I think it's been a matter of days, because really, the First Order knows where they are, right? Hence, that's why they're evacuating. I mean, but they knew where they were at the end of The Force Awakens, right? They were aiming they were aiming Starkiller Base to fire. I can't imagine that they were sitting on that knowledge too long. And then attack Dakar. So I feel like it would be nice to have a nice break, right? Give Rey some time to study those books. Give Kylo enough time to rally his troops. I don't know. What do you think?
That's just it. I don't know what I think.
It could be anything, right?
It could be anything, and I love it. There's a lot of fans who are uncomfortable right now because we don't know. Like, they feel like that this is sort of directionless, and I kind of like that.
That's the best kind of story. I mean, I don't want to go in knowing X, Y, and Z is going to happen, right? Like, I want to be surprised. I want this to take me in a new direction, and I just want to go with it. I want to, I don't want to know what's going to happen. I don't want it to have to follow a formula.
Yeah, I mean, this will be one of the first things we learn at some point. I would imagine in the next couple of months that, once JJ's really firmed up his script, some news will slip out that, or be released, that episode 9 takes place, blank in the future.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the first things we learned about The Last Jedi, is like, we knew quite some time ago that it was going to pick up immediately after. Like, way before any trailer or picture or anything. Like, I feel like we almost knew, I mean, this might be an exaggeration, but I feel like we almost knew months after The Force Awakens that was what was going to happen.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. I don't think they hid that from us for very long. I have no clue, man, and I don't even know what makes sense, to be honest with you. If you want to, you think of episode 9 and you think of huge epic space battles, all these capital ships dogpiling on each other, lightsaber battles. That's kind of the way we see episode 9s, right? Like, the climax of a trilogy needs to be grand on every level. So if that's the case, then then the Resistance obviously needs to make new friends, or at least rally the ones they had out, where Outer Rim, Outer Reaches?
In the Outer Rim. Reaches? I mean, they need to regroup completely. They're completely depleted at this point.
Yeah, there's literally like 12 people left.
Nothing left.
Yeah, it's hard to even get your mind around that. There's nobody left. The Resistance has been reduced to a few people, and in the visual dictionary, this is an interesting note, which maybe plays into episode 9, but Snap Wexley and a few members of Black Squadron were sent off on a mission.
See, okay, here's something funny. I thought Snap died in the original battle, because there's a pilot that looks just like him that blew up, and I turned to Dan, I was like, did they just kill Snap? Like, and I was like, I don't know what was going on.
Maybe if I mean, I don't know the actor you're thinking of, but if that was the intention, maybe that was it. Like, this could be Snap Wexley if if we don't want to ever write a piece for him again. But it turns out in the visual dictionary, he and a few members of Black Squadron were sent off on some sort of mission before the escape from Dakar.
Oh wow. Okay.
So that
I would
could
like
play
that.
into 9.
Yeah. Because I really like Snap. I mean, Dan didn't read all the Aftermath novels, but I feel like, yeah, I mean, you and I read them, and we followed this whole trilogy with him, and now he's in the Poe Dameron comics. Yeah, I would hate to see him go in just like a quick manner, some kind of resolution.
Yeah, so I mean, do you agree that 9 kind of has to have that feel of grand epic finale?
See, they could surprise us. They surprised us with this one.
Yeah, they could close ranks, right? They could make this really, really cut close to the bone with intimacy and personal exploration and make it a super, super dense movie on that personal front.
But I feel like the reasoning it won't be so much like that is because we really got that with this film. And I think that was the point, right? Force Awakens was a quick, action-packed intro. All right, let's flesh out these characters. All right, now that we've raised the stakes, action out. Yeah, I mean, again, also just the rule of trilogies and series, right? The ending chapters always got to be something big. But again, what the definition of big is might be different to JJ this time around.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Like, JJ does big pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that he does up close and personal super well.
Right. So that's why I feel like it makes sense to have him back for maybe the big closeout.
And which means it probably makes sense for there to be some kind of time jump. And I know people are going, well, duh, you dummy. Of course there has to be a time jump. I don't think it's that simple. I think it's maybe likely just so that they can, reset the decks here.
Right. It's not absolutely necessary, but I think it makes sense given what they have to work with Carrie Fisher and just, again, the rebuilding of the troops. And there's just so much that needs to happen in order for it to make sense for them to go, head to head with the First Order again. But also I would love to, so they put out the call to the Outer Rim. And they didn't get answered right away, obviously, because everything's happening in real time. And again, if the Outer Rim's so far out, it's going to take a long time for people to get to them anyway. But I would love to see...
And yeah, nobody replied, right?
No one replied. It was quiet. But I would that would be a cool way to get Lando back.
Right.
Get Maz Kanata back in the fold. Get all these allies that are out there. These resources that they can really tap into.
Because there's no other choice, right?
They need people. Yeah.
And you wonder what Kylo's doing with the First Order, because I feel like Kylo has no desire to sort of be like the political head. Maybe that's Hux's thing now. He's sort of fitting into that role of galactic dictator, whereas Kylo is still pursuing his goal of revenge.
Yeah,
I guess.
I mean, that's a cool dynamic too, Hux and Kylo, right? Hux is trying to play by the book, right? And then Kylo's just like, blow him to hell, and it's an interesting tug of war between those two. I don't think it's so much antagonistic, it's more of just fundamental differences in leadership and motivation.
Yeah. Yep, I can get on board with that.
It's not like a Krennic Tarkin situation. It's very different.
So let's assume that our heroes kind of line up with a new group of a ragtag fleet, pirates. I don't know how they do this, but is Finn suddenly Captain Finn, or are we back to Commander or Major Dameron? Like, is everybody, like, Star Wars specializes in that, right? Like, you show up, hey, oh, you're ready to help? How does general sound? You want to be a general? You're a general. What would you like to be?
Yeah, I don't think Poe is demoted anymore. I really think that was a temporary setback just to kind of give him that character growth. I think when we come back, we're going to see Poe having learned his lesson from The Last Jedi. And we're going to see him more in a leadership role. With Finn, see, he's still kind of on the outskirts, right? I mean, he was an outsider in The Force Awakens doing his thing. He was an outsider on a side mission here. Again, if there's that time jump, maybe he'll be more in a leadership role. Kind of in the way how Han Solo kind of came up and became a leader. I don't know.
It's really tough. It's and Rey is studying those books.
Rey is Rey. I don't think Rey really has any part of the Resistance per se, like as far as like commander or general, any of that stuff. She's kind of.
Do you think she's kicking around with the Resistance, or she's kind of said her goodbyes and she's off somewhere else?
I feel like she needs some solitude, right? I feel like she might go back to the First Temple. Maybe she'll go back to totally blanking Act 2. Maybe she'll go back to Act 2. Not necessarily. She doesn't have to, because like Yoda kind of, blazed up the tree and all that. So there's really not much there. She has the books with her. So maybe she is.
Yeah, I think the Last Jedi, if anything, was about burning that old Jedi legacy down.
Right. There's nothing she has to go to.
Yeah, I don't think there's any reason for us as an audience to keep clinging to this old Jedi stuff. I think she's pushing ahead, and she's sort of the ground zero of the new Jedi.
Right. And so maybe if she goes somewhere else, not so much because of what's there, but maybe she just needs a space to teach herself, to maybe commune with Luke. She kind of has to train herself now and learn what the original Jedi thought, and how she can adapt that to the situation they're in now.
There was an old rumor. It's not that old. It's from some point this year that we were going back to Jakku in Episode 9, and obviously this is when Colin Trevorrow was still writing with what's his face, Derek Connolly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was what was going on. That Jakku was back in the picture.
I don't see it if they do go back to Jakku. I don't see it being like an entire act of the film. I could see something more subtle. Maybe Rey is saying goodbye to Jakku. Maybe Rey goes back for just some closure.
Yeah, maybe like we could open with her at her parents' grave or something like that.
Right, or the AT-AT where she slept. Maybe she goes and just looks at her old things. And maybe
get her old toothbrush.
But maybe her rebel helmet that she's put on for fun. Her little X-wing doll, her X-wing pilot doll. Whatever. Maybe she's got a bone to pick with Unkar Plot. But I don't know. I could see it maybe just being like a quick 5-minute, 3-minute scene. I don't think it's going to be this grand scale, like, oh, back to Jakku. But, I mean, also there's that mythology that's built in where Jakku was a base for the Empire, right? And they were doing some shady stuff there. So
right, Aftermath was they really went pretty deep on that. It was an observatory, right?
Right, and they were doing their thing. So maybe we'll explore maybe a little bit more, because Jakku is kind of where all this started. So kind of how we went back to Tatooine in Episode 6. Maybe we'll do a quick little brushback of Jakku.
Oh, there's the rehash talk.
But there was a whole act on Tatooine. I don't think they're going to do a full, there's no Jabba the Hutt there. There's no Boba Fett there. There's no big thing happening there.
Yeah, there's no rescue that needs to happen there. There's no reason to spend 30-45 minutes.
Right. I think it's more of an emotional kind of closure piece. If we do go back, we don't necessarily have to. Again, the whole theme is letting go of the past. So, it's not necessary.
I was convinced. Remember in Aftermath where it said that Jakku used to be like a green planet just teeming with green life?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
I feel like that was mentioned for a reason.
Hmm.
I don't know that Rey can affect that kind of change. Maybe. Oh, you know what? Maybe she can.
Well, it was still a desert planet in Aftermath, right?
It was.
So she
Like,
wasn't
a
born
long
yet.
time ago. A
So
long time ago.
do you mean she caused the green to go away, or you think she can bring the
Bring it
green
back.
back? Yeah.
Bring it back. Like, transform that dust ball into a planet. Because look at that little shot, that one little shot in TFA, or The Last Jedi, that kind of bothers me when Luke is explaining the Force to Rey,
Mm-hmm.
and we see the shot of the decaying dinosaur bones, and there's that one quick shot of those little plants shooting up from the soil.
Yeah.
The Force, Force making life grow. I wonder if that's a little foreshadow. Obviously, Rian Johnson would have no way to know that he was foreshadowing 9, but would Rey want to go back to Jakku and bring life back to her planet so it's not such a depressing dump?
It could be interesting.
I don't know. Maybe we pick up with her years later and that's exactly what she's doing. She's trying to restore life to Jakku.
I mean, we are getting all these new kind of looks at what the Force can do. And perhaps a part of that could be influencing life on planets, a holistic... I almost see it as like kind of going a little more pagan there. A little holistic, earthy vibe. I don't know. It's possible. Anything's possible now.
It certainly is. All right, man. I think we're done for today.
What are we clocking in about 2 hours? I think for
somewhere around there, somewhere around the 2 hour mark. But yeah, another good healthy talk. That brings us up to about 5 hours. The Last Jedi, just rambly, straight up Last Jedi talk. We're clocking in at about 5 hours now, and we still have other members of the team here to work in. We haven't talked about news in a while. We haven't had any questions from the powerful friends. No binary sunset. Yeah, man. Like this movie has really, I think definitely more than The Force Awakens, and certainly more than Rogue One, given us an awful lot to talk about.
It's going to be interesting to see how this conversation evolves over the next 2 years.
Oh yeah. Oh my goodness. Just to see how this movie is going to change in fans' opinions. Can you rank this movie? I still haven't done this exercise. I don't know how I feel about ranking Star Wars movies, but it seems like to be a fun exercise. Do you have a slot for it?
It's so hard to do. I think I even tweeted about it. I was like, I can't. I love them all. But right now, I was just like kind of mulling it over. I have The Force Awakens up top. Empire Strikes Back, followed by The Last Jedi. So it's in my top 3 right now. Followed by A New Hope, Rogue One, Return of the Jedi, Revenge of the Sith, Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones. That's kind of my order. The way I ranked it, I used my photo app in my phone to kind of just do this exercise. I can't put any ties with it because it's just a list of photos. But I would say there's maybe even a couple of ties in here. But that's kind of my list at the moment. But it can change. It's very fluid.
Oh yeah, these lists are always subject to change. Just one day you might watch, let me pop in this movie. I haven't watched it in 10 years. Let's see what it's like. Oh my goodness, something jumps out at you, or 5 things jump out at you, and suddenly you like this movie so much more today. And it overtakes, it jumps up 2 spots on your list.
I mean, The Last Jedi did that after a second watch through. Like, after I saw it the first time, it was kind of like in the middle, dead center. And then after I saw it again and really thought about it, yeah, it crept its way up to top 3. And honestly, I could see it becoming maybe my favorite one day.
Yeah, we're just gonna have to see how this one ages. I mean, again, everybody knows about this now, but Empire really didn't sit well with a lot of fans at the time. It just seemed so off. It wasn't a swashbuckling, upbeat adventure like A New Hope was. So it took time for people to appreciate the lore that was built into it. And making Luke Darth Vader's son, what a slap in the face. How could you do that? Turns out it became one of cinema's greatest moments and spawned one of the greatest stories in cinema history. But if I had to, I still don't know if I can rank it, but I still have Empire as my first and A New Hope as my second. And this has made me think, like, what will it take to drop these two, to knock those two out of their spot? Right now I have The Last Jedi fighting with Revenge of the Sith and The Force Awakens for third. So that's my jumble from 3 through 5. So I guess today, boy oh boy, I'm still going to stick with Revenge of the Sith at 3, then The Last Jedi, then TFA. And then further down the list, I'll go Return of the Jedi, Rogue One, Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones. And that, like I said, that 3 through 5 is really subject to change.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's something that could just keep flip-flopping at any given moment.
Right, because all these films offer something different. It's funny, like, even though I have Attack of the Clones dead last, I loved kind of the mystery of Camino, and I loved the way it started with the assassination attempt, and there are just things in that film that I do love. The Jango Fett fight. So it's interesting. There's something that I look for in each film. It just depends what I'm in the mood for that day. Dictates what I stream or pop in the Blu-ray player or whatever. I think it just comes with being a Star Wars fan.
Yeah, and just because there's 9 movies, and if you're going to rank them, something is going to be at the bottom, and it doesn't mean you hate it. It just means that it has to be. It's like somebody's got to lose.
Exactly.
Somebody's got to come in last place, and I think consistently, I've seen Attack of the Clones at the bottom of that list, which is saying something.
Again, it all comes down to the overall execution, right? It's like I love the story of Attack of the Clones. There's just a lot of execution choices that didn't press the right buttons for me.
Yep. Again, yeah, I love the story. I love the arc that it takes, but some choices just I can't live with. I can't deal with. I keep going back to Obi-Wan's flesh wounds that had him unconscious on the ground, in and out of consciousness. 2 minor flesh wounds. And he's just like flat on his back, watching Anakin fight for his life. I can't get over how dumb that is. Anyway, Steve, this was awesome, man. I'm glad we got to put we're burning the midnight oil yet again, and we're podcasting on back-to-back nights. I'm tired. I know you are too, but the holidays are pretty much here, and that's it. Let's punch out of here, man.
All right, let's do it. Thank you again for having me on. It was awesome.
Yeah, it was nice to not talk about books for once.
Yeah, right? Take a little break from
we'll
journals.
Be back soon to do that, right?
Oh yeah. I have to pick the next novel I'm gonna chew down. We'll see. We'll have to pick something that maybe we both want to read, and then because we've been basically focused on the comics for the most part. So
yeah, in the summer I took a big step back from the novels because none of them were really ringing the bell for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's a problem with the writing because they're not that compelling, or if it's me because I just insist on getting too many data points. I want too many ties, and I just want the Wikipedia of it all. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Know exactly what you mean.
So yeah, maybe a novel is in the offing here, but we'll see. We'll talk about that. So where can people find you on Twitter while they wait for us to get back to the next podcast?
On Twitter, I am at JoangoFett.
Perfect. And I am at Tumbling Saber on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Come check us out. Don't forget, we have a new Facebook group, which is a lot more open, a much freer place to share content and post your thoughts. So make sure when you search Facebook, you make sure you're in the group and not the page, because I'm slowly phasing that page out. And beyond that, make sure, if you like what we do here, if you like our podcasts, if you want to hear more from us, check out our page on Patreon at patreon.com/tumblingsaber. $2-3 a month. That's all it takes, and you get a bunch of exclusive podcasts, and you're in our draws for our monthly giveaway. And sometimes we do other random giveaways. Me and Steve did a random giveaway just last week that Dave Donovan won. So yeah, there you go. Patreon.com/tumblingsaber. Giveaways, exclusive podcasts, a lot more. And just $2-3 a month, man. Make it a Christmas gift to us. How about that? And that's it. We might have a break coming up here at Tumbling Saber. I'm wiped out. I need a bit of a break, but I'm sure we'll put something in the pipeline here soon enough. And if not, it'll be episode 108 will be the next time you hear from us. So we hope you guys had a great Christmas, and we'll talk to you all soon on Twitter. Have yourselves a good one, and we'll talk soon.
Self-redeeming qualities, have they hindered me? Hindering, was I blind to see? Blind to see that you needed me, all of me. Well, you were there for me. I will be there too, watching, listening, every moment, wanting all of you. And I believe I can save you. Just don't let me go. And I can see I'll be waiting, always waiting. Just don't let me go. Just don't let me go. Time goes on and I'm questioning all the things I've seen, crazy things I've seen as I'm watching you. I'm watching you walking away from me. Were you watching